Part 32. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 311. Now Manbao is very close to his mother's potion, so he doesn't like spending points more and more. She has the same problem as her father. When she decides to do a big thing and finds that she is very close to it, she is reluctant to divide her power to do other things. People are always stingy until that big thing is done. However, the points of the system are important, and the copper coins at home are also very important. Manbao has passed the age where she has to choose one or the other. She has grown very fast in the past year. The more she thinks, the bigger her heart is. For example, when faced with the problem of choosing one or the other, she will think of both. And she doesn't have to ask Keek for advice as before, she can figure out a way by herself. It's just that she is young, so she has some doubts and doesn't know if her decision is right, so she wants to ask her friends. Bai Shanbao was the best candidate, not only because he was one of her best friends, but also because he was the only person within 100 miles who might be a little bit smarter than her. And what she wants is not only wheat seeds, but also other interesting seeds. Because Manbao discovered that the seeds exchanged from the future were the most precious things to her, their family, and even the entire villagers of Qilai village. In fact, since the forum was opened and it was carefully divided into two parts, Manbao has been thinking about it. Since she can trade with people in other worlds in the second channel, exchange things for points, barter, and shop with points, can she do this in the first channel? After all, for you Manbao, no matter how powerful people in other worlds are, can those people in Keek world be as powerful? What's more, it takes so many points to open the second channel. Manbao feels that it is not difficult to trade with those research institutes or researchers, but the difficulty is how to set the price and whether it is worth it. Bai Shanbao didn't know there was such a miraculous thing in his little friend. Hearing her troubles, he said without thinking, if you think the value of wheat seeds is higher than what you exchanged, then change it. He said, if you are worried about being deceived, I can go with you. Manbao shook his head, no need, I know what to do. In that case, she could try bartering. Since she intends to barter, Manbao has no intention of looking for strangers, she intends to talk to someone who has already traded. Manbao's eyes fell on the poria clay that had been quietly sitting in the corner. Keek never let her post and throw this thing up, saying that the time hasn't come yet. Manbao knew that this thing must be very valuable, at least much more valuable than the wisteria and azalea that she dug up. Dad always said that a good meal is not afraid of being late, and you must hurry up to plant the crops, but you can't plant too early, otherwise a cold wave will make the whole family's efforts in vain. The harvest is the same, neither late nor early. If it rains later, the food will be wasted earlier, which will increase the loss in vain. So Manbao looked at the piles of mud in the corner of the system at this moment, put it in the back of his mind in advance, and decided to wait for the time Keek said. In any case, the autumn harvest has not yet begun, and there are still several months before the winter wheat is sown. Manbao made up his mind and lowered his head to do his homework. Obviously, the homework assigned by Mr. Zhuang was more important at this time. After Manbao finished her homework and reviewed today's homework with Bai Shanbao, she went home. The big ones had already gone home, and the cabbage worms they caught were placed in a crock pot and covered with a flour basket to prevent them from crawling out. Although Manbao is no longer afraid of them, she is still a little scared when she suddenly sees so many living cabbage worms wiggling around. Manbao used 2 sticks to wrap them in a leaf, and threw the empty one to Keek. After dealing with the cabbage caterpillar, Manbao turned to other things. The others are all kinds of plants, but they are much easier to handle, and she received them directly into the system in one package. Keek arranged the package according to the order, and then sent it out together after gathering. After doing these things, Manbao opened his account and became silly. Keek was also very happy, and said, the host can browse the forum when you have time, and now there are many hosts who open the second channel, even if you can't. Transactions, you can also look at the transactions in the forum. Manbao responded, she knew that Keek still preferred her to participate in the second channel transaction. Just thinking about it, Feng Shi from the yard next door shouted, and everyone ran over to eat. Manbao also ran over. On Tuesday, Lang obviously just came back, and the sweat on his face was not wiped off. Manbao ran past him and only asked, "Second brother, how's the business?" Tuesday Lang nodded, with a strong smile on his face, "Not bad." He has gotten to know him well in the county town, and people who go grocery shopping often like to buy from him. Manbao also only listened for 1 year and ran to his father's side, asking, "Father, are we going to exchange wheat for other people's seeds as seeds?" Well, the village chief brought some shredded tobacco to Lao's Hutu when they came today, so he is smoking again now, and he is smoking a dry cigarette with satisfaction, and said with a contented face, "Our family is lucky this year, God blesses that the wheat harvest is okay, and the harvest of some of the land that was not flooded turned out to be better than last year, so they all want to use our wheat for seed." When the old Hutu said this, he turned his head and asked the old wife who was sitting in the corner twisting twine, "Has our wheat seeds been harvested?" Qian said with a hum, "All that you have harvested has been collected and taken off. The sun has been good for the past 2 days, and it has been basking." Old Hutu nodded contentedly, "I see that it is going to rain in the next 2 days. I must be optimistic about these seeds. Except for the ones we left alone, they can replace the other wheat if they want. They are all eaten anyway." Everyone has no opinion. This kind of replacement method is not uncommon in the countryside, but it is not uncommon. After all, everyone trusts the seeds left by themselves, and there are very few people who change the seeds of other homes on such a large scale. Qian asked, "Do you know how much they want to exchange?" "A lot, at least half of the wheat seeds in the village must come from our house." "So many," Zhou Dalin was astonished, "it's not as good as the one that came out." The matter was brought up by them, and it wasn't that I had to exchange it for them, or it was to end up complaining. It was also on the first few of them, and they didn't do our family's business, but we also have to dry the wheat well, don't get caught in the rain, boss, be careful these days. Speaking of this, he remembered that Zhou Dalin went to help Zhou Hu's house today, and asked, "How is Zhou Hu's house?" "My dears, this is the penultimate day of June. If you still have a guaranteed monthly ticket, you can consider Farmer's Little Lucky Girl. It is now the 10th place on the list of new books. Bamboo is just hoping it can stand on the 10th place, so Manbao has been on the list anyway." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 312. Zhou Dalin sighed, "Today, the other houses in the village have finished cutting the wheat, and Zhou Hu's house still has 4 plots of land." Old Zhou frowned, "Is this too slow?" "That can't be helped. His daughter-in-law is still lying in bed and can't move. He has to go back to make 3 meals a day and medicine. Fortunately, Defu and Erla can help, otherwise he will not be able to take care of the land and the family." Manbao said, "Big brother, tomorrow you will bring the 5th and 6th brothers to help. I will also help after school. I have learned to hold a sickle." Old Zhou Tiou smoked a cigarette for a while without speaking. Qian Shi glanced at him and said, "Just listen to Manbao, I think the sky is gloomy today, maybe it will rain at any time, so bring the big head and the 2 heads too, since the wheat has been cut, I will help others to cut the beans in the field as well." Zhou Dalin happily agreed, he and Zhou Hu have a very good relationship. Qian thought for a while, then looked at he who was numb, and said, "Zhou Hu's family has a good relationship with you. You can go there tomorrow morning to see. There are some things that a man can't do carelessly, and a woman has to come." He also happily responded. Her family's home is a bit far from Kilai village, and the whole Qilai village's daughter-in-law is the same village as Chen's, and she played with sister Chen's ass when she was a child, and she was well cared for, so they had a good relationship after they got married. In particular, her relationship with Zhou Hu's family is still connected by the Chen family, so the relationship between their third family and Zhou Hu's family is also good. Old Zhou Tiou didn't say a word, but he was smoking a little harder. When he looked down and saw the little girl's face was also happy, he couldn't help but nodded her for it. It was really a manpower without money. 1 or 2 are not enough to help you in the past, but half of the family has to go there? However, Qianshi made up his mind, the sons had no objection, and the daughter-in-law had no objection, so it was not easy for old Zhou to object. It's just that no one expected that it would rain with lightning and thunder that night. Fortunately, in the evening, the old Zhou family moved all the things that were drying in the yard back into the house. So the Zhou family just looked up tiredly and looked outside, and then fell asleep again, but many people in the village couldn't sleep anymore, and quickly got up to collect their things. Although the things are covered with wheatgrass to block the dew, it is obvious that the wheatgrass cannot keep out the rain, especially the heavy rain in summer. So many people have to get up in the dark to collect food. Most of the people in the village had the lights on, and half of them were dark. Obviously, many people had the same foresight as the old Zhou family. The lights at Zhou Hu's house were also on, but he didn't dry things in the yard. In the evening, Zhou Dalin reminded him to take back all the things in the yard in case it rained at night. He hoped not to go down, but he still went down. There is still unharvested wheat in his fields. The wind was blowing violently, and big raindrops were falling down, but the summer rain came and went quickly. That is, Man Bao turned over, rolled from one side to the other, continued to sleep with his mouth open, and the rain outside slowly subsided, and then stopped after a while. If it wasn't for waking up the next day and seeing the wet yard in the yard, Man Bao, who slept like a pig, wouldn't even know it rained last night. The next day was only slightly bright, and Zhou Dalin took his 2 younger brothers and went out with a sickle, and the children could go later. After all, it is not their own land, and children still have this privilege. Wheat is very fragile, especially the yellowed wheat. When the wind blows and the rain blows, a large piece of the wheat is blown down and clings to the ground. In some relatively low-lying fields, water still accumulated, soaking the wheat. In the entire Qilai village, the wheat from Zhou Hu's family was confiscated, and the beans in the fields were in good condition. Many people came out early in the morning with sickles to harvest the beans. A rain may not affect the beans, but how many more? The grain still has to be collected and dried, and it is the best to receive it in the warehouse. The villagers also saw Zhou Dalin and others who were working in Zhou Hu's home. They were stunned for a while and greeted them enthusiastically, knowing that they were here to help Zhou Hu. On the contrary, Zhou Hu was the last to arrive in the field. After all, he had to cook porridge and medicine for his wife and children when he woke up, so when he got to the field, Zhou Dalin had already led his 2 younger brothers to cut out a big piece. Zhou Hu stood blankly, his eyes a little red. Zhou Dalin turned around indifferently and waved, "Hurry up, the sun will come out in a while." Zhou Hu hurried forward with the sickle. Today's wheat was even more difficult to cut because it fell down. Zhou Dalin and Zhou Hu asked Weavolang and Saturday Lang to cut the good ones. The 2 of them bent over to cut the wheat that was lying on the ground. His waist was almost bent to the ground. I couldn't take it anymore, so I squatted and cut forward. So they hated the rain when they were harvesting. The harvested wheat did not dare to be dried in the ground again, so it was bundled up and picked up in a bamboo basket. At noon, Zhou Hu went home to bring food to Zhou's house, but was held down by Zhou Dalin, and said, "My yard is full of wheat and soybeans, but I can't turn around. It just so happens that the third daughter-in-law is here, let her do whatever you want in your house. Just get some food." Mr. Ho has no opinion at all. Bringing food to Lao Zhou's house is equivalent to inviting the whole old Zhou family to eat. Their family has a large population, and the family eats as much food as Zhou Hu's family for 7 days. Zhou Hu is a man after all, and he can't take care of many things. Mr. He just wiped his body and changed his clothes for Mrs. Chen all morning. After washing his hands, he went to the kitchen to help them cook. Zhou Hu opened his mouth to say something, but Zhou Dalin held him down and said, "Okay, you and my brother don't pay attention to these things. It's not easy for your family now. By the way, the sun is not too small today. Take a break at noon, and then again in the afternoon. Go, we'll do it a little later at night, and it should be cleaned up after half a day of work tomorrow." Zhou Hu responded in a low voice, and patted his shoulder, "Good brother." Zhou Dalin smiled at him and bumped his shoulder. After making an appointment to leave for work in the afternoon, Zhou Dalin led his family back after dinner, but when they went to the field again in the afternoon, they found a lot of people standing there. Not only Zhou Dalin, but also Zhou Hu, who came here, was stunned for a moment. When Zhou Dazu saw them, he waved his sickle and asked, "How many pieces are left?" Zhou Dalin was the first to return to his senses and grinned, "This piece, and the 2 pieces on the back of the mountain. You have so many people here, you should be able to make it tonight." Zhou Dazu smiled and said, "Let's start then." When Manbao went to the field after school, Datu was leading his younger brothers and sisters to hold together small piles of wheat and tie them up for the adults, and then pick them home. Manbao rolled up his sleeves and asked, "What can I do?" Everyone glanced at the white and tender Manbao, and said happily, "You can't roll up your sleeves while holding the wheat, you have to tie them up, or Manbao will cry at night." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 313. Manbao, of course, listened to the adults and tied up her sleeves, but Maimang was unskilled in her work. Even if her sleeves were tied to her wrists, the backs of her hands, palms and fingers would still be stabbed. But she didn't feel it at the time. When she felt it, her hands were already hot. Looking down, she found that there were many red marks. Xiao Qian looked so distressed, but she couldn't do anything about it. This kind of red scar would be fine when the scab fell off, and no one had ever thought of treating it. So she soaked Manbao's hands in the ice-cold well water according to her experience, then cleaned her hands and went to Zhou Hu's house to help cook. There are many people who went to Zhou Hu's house to help today, and a meal is indispensable, but since Mrs. Chen was still lying on the bed, she could only help the women around her. Unfortunately, the neighbors of Zhou Hu's family are all their own uncles and aunts, and they didn't go to the ground to help. Of course, it was impossible to help in the yard. So Mr. Qian took Mr. He to help. Xiao Qian's cooking has always been fast and delicious. Zhou Hu took the money to Deifu and asked him and the big head and the second to go to the big market to buy some meat back. Deifu seldom went to the market, and every time he went, he always followed his parents. This was the first time that he had bought meat with money, so he was trembling. Zhou Hu was also afraid that his son would get lost on the road, so he asked Deitu Ertu to accompany him. In contrast, there are too many similar experiences for the big head and the second head. Going to Deji is as skilled as going to grandma's house. While trotting, you chase after me, while playing with the flowers and plants on the road. However, Manbao didn't like to stay at Zhou Hu's house to eat. She preferred to go home and eat with her mother, so she squeezed in front of the bed to watch the third birthday before going home. Chen Shi was full of breath, at least she is no longer panting when she talks. She took Manbao's hand and smiled, "What's the hurry, talk to Erlu Sanchao here, you are not always with is Erlu okay?" Manbao looked down and saw Sanchao's eyes staring at her, and smiled, "I want to go home to do my homework, but Sanchao is so cute. Chen Shi also looked down at him and said with a smile, yeah, it looks a lot better. Now the red color on Sanchao's body has faded, maybe because of drinking goat's milk. He has always had a faint milky fragrance on his body. A child who is white and tender, and has a milky fragrance, will be liked by anyone who sees it. Man Bao couldn't help but touched his little face with his fingertips. Chen Shi smiled. When Man Bao met her smiling eyes, he couldn't help but move in his heart, and immediately said excitedly, "Sister-in-law Tiger, can I check your pulse for you?" Chen Shi was stunned. Man Bao still sees a doctor. "I'm learning, soon. After saying that, he took Chen's hand to give her a pulse. Chen Shi smiled and let her feel her pulse, and asked with a smile, "Who did you learn from?" "I learned it by myself." Chen Shi couldn't help laughing softly, but she didn't say anything and let her touch it. Man Bao touched it for a while, then closed his eyes and felt it seriously. In the past, she didn't understand why Manager Zheng and the others would slightly close their eyes when they took the patient's pulse, but now she knows. When you close your eyes and your mind is calm, your ears will be much more sensitive. At this time, when you touch the patient's pulse, the thumping feeling is more obvious, and you can hear more things. Man Bao felt Chen's pulse, and after feeling his right hand, he touched his left. Chen Shi smiled and asked her, "What do you see?" Man Bao said solemnly, "Sister-in-law Tiger, your pulse is weaker than my mother's." Chen Shi smiled and said, "It's natural. After all, Qian could walk on the ground and do some light work, but she didn't dare to move too much." Man Bao scratched his face, "Qi and blood." Chen Shi nodded with a smile. She gave birth to a child with so much blood, of course she would lose both qi and blood. The doctor said before that she might not survive, and she bleed too much. It's just that people are really amazing. When you firmly don't want to die, you actually hold your breath, and then slowly get better. It's just that Chen's heart is a little worried, and she thinks that she will probably not be able to do heavy work like Qian's in the future, and will only be able to do some housework at home for the rest of her life. But Chen was very satisfied. Zhou was also very satisfied. A wife is better alive than dead. Man Bao felt Chen's pulse and went home contentedly. As soon as she got home, she felt her mother's pulse, wrote down the feelings the two gave her in her notes, and decided to go to the teaching room at night to ask the teacher. Across the system and the encyclopedia, the future teacher who taught Man Bao was even more surprised. Although he is a doctor of medicine and takes classes in school, the class Man Bao is taking belongs to the history of ancient medicine. He talks more about history than medical skills. He talks about orthopedics, gynecology, and more about the history of their development, how the ancients identified diseases and prescribed medicines. As a result, one day he received an email, which turned out to be an inquiry based on ancient technology. Oh, it has developed to a specific case now. It's been 600 years since the star calendar, who would still be deficient in qi and blood? Oh, there are still some. It must be caused by staying up all night playing games and overdrafting life. It seems that the game warehouses bought by the two cases are second-hand goods, and it is possible that the function of detecting physical conditions, actively isolating consciousness, and forcing rest has not been carried out. But the pulse didn't look very similar, and the records she looked and heard showed that one of the cases was caused by massive hemorrhage. But how is this possible? Could it be that a doctor deliberately concealed the patient's physical condition to confuse the other party to carry out maternal pregnancy? But this is impossible. Even if it can be deceived for a while, the medical robot in the patient's home should also check that something is wrong during the pregnancy. The medical doctor thought that his hair was about to fall out, and then he went to check the IP of the question, which didn't matter. His eyes almost bulged out. Not their interstellar people. The MD can't wait to jump 3 feet high. The subsystems under the main system of their covenant travel through wormholes to various worlds, looking for things that are beneficial to the development of their covenant. This includes not only books containing the wisdom of intelligent creatures, but also minerals, plants, animals, and other things. The system directly connects their encyclopedia and mall as rewards in the subsystem. These are no secrets, because they are benefiting all the time. For example, a mineral material discovered 12 years ago has made their mecha defense even further, and at the same time, those who have systems in the world can always get various things from them. Some of the most visionaries among them will learn their technology through subsystems, and that is something far beyond their technology. Some of them learn medical skills, but none of them learn ancient medical skills. Nonsense, with today's technology, who still uses their hands to consult a doctor? Just plug a person into the scanning cabin, and it is clear at a glance what is wrong with the person. But now there is one, and the MD guesses that the technology in her world must be very backward, so she chooses this ancient medical technique. So she's going to have tons of cases in there too. Oh my God, he's found a baby. The MD laughed like an adulterer. Instead of posting a video in a simple and rude manner, he sent out a text full of smiles, just like the grandfather of a trafficker who wants to kidnap children. Going out for injections again, the eczema has recurred again. This year is really a disaster. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 314. When Manbao used the time before bed to sneak into the teaching room again, she saw the email beside it kept flashing, and she clicked it, thinking it was another video sent by the teacher to solve her doubts. Who knew what appeared was a text? Manbao scratched her head. Although she felt that the video was better than the text, she still read the letter patiently. Whether it is audio or text, through the system, Keek will convert it into language and text that Manbao can understand and understand. This teacher obviously knew that Manbao was from another world, so the letter expressed her great interest in the patients of her era. He hoped that the two sides could cooperate, he would provide her with technical support, and she could provide him with enough medical records to do research together. Manbao didn't think there was anything good to study. Isn't studying medicine just to cure diseases and save people? However, she did not object to the other party's proposal, because having a teacher who can communicate at any time is better than coming to the classroom with a book to listen to the class. So Manbao readily agreed. The MD was happy, and so was Manbao. So when Bai Shanbao saw her the next day, she had a smile on her face and looked very happy. Bai Shanbao was a little lost, sighing, and Manbao couldn't help but regain his senses from his joy and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Bai Shanbao said, "Grandma wants to take me back to Longzhou for the Mid-Autumn Festival." Manbao counted the days with his fingers, and said, "There is still a month until the Mid-Autumn Festival." "Yeah, we're going to Longzhou, and we'll have to walk for at least 20 days. When we get there, we have to visit relatives and friends, and we have to inspect the family business. That's almost it." So Bai Shanbao was a little unhappy. "When we come back from Longzhou, it might be mid-September. It's been 2 months. Then you don't go to school. My grandmother said she would take me to study, just don't leave my homework behind. I'll just make up some lessons with my husband when I get back." Manbao was also very reluctant to bear Bai Shanbao, and asked, "Why do you have to go back to the Mid-Autumn Festival? Don't you have close relatives at your house?" Bai Shanbao nodded, "Yes, it's gone. It's just a letter from the housekeeper saying that someone from a clan found Zhuangzili and wanted to buy a farm and buy a property. It's impossible not to go back." Manbao scratched his head and didn't quite understand. "They bought fields and properties, why are you going back?" Bai Shanbao just looked at her with a grin, but there was no smile in his eyes, "Because they are looking at my farm." Manbao's eyes widened. Is this still possible? Of course, Liu's family didn't hide anything from Bai Shanbao, because she felt that in the future, Bai Shanbao was the one who established the family, so Bai Shanbao knew about these things. he clenched his fist tightly and said, "Did my father just die? How long ago?" "Some clan elders came to help my family to manage the family business, but my grandmother didn't agree. After this happened several times, my grandmother was overwhelmed, and they became more and more powerful. Some of the state's properties and shops have been sold and moved here. But selling it doesn't mean Liu's holding the money. The money was finally used to buy a farm, just around the former farm. One is that they are familiar with the place, and they have been in charge at home for many years, which is more accustomed to. The other is that it is easier to manage the industry because it is concentrated together. The disadvantages are also obvious. It is not very far from Longzhou, and some relatives of the Bai family also have fields there." Bai Shanbao was a little angry. "Grandma should have sold all the land to come here, so we don't have to go back." Manbao nodded and agreed, "This way you won't miss class." Yes, yes." Bai Shanbao rolled his eyes and said, "Why don't you go home with me and convince my grandmother with me? I'm not enough alone." Bai Shanbao said, "Grandma likes you. If we talk together, she might consider it." Manbao said there was no problem. "Today my brothers went to collect beans for Erlu's family, and no one went up the mountain with me to play, so I happened to be free." Manbao and Bai Shanbao, who happened to be free, went back to Bai's house and tried their best to persuade Lu to buy farmland and land here. Looking at the two innocent children, Lu Shi couldn't help touching their little heads and sighing, "How can things in this world be so simple?" Bai Shanbao was a little dissatisfied. "Things in the world are inherently simple, but you adults think too much. Silly child, you only see the disadvantages of our family's industry in Longzhou, but you don't see the advantages." Lu Shi paused, thinking that both children had learned university, and no longer hesitated, said, "I ask you, where is the fertile land for sale in Qilai village?" Where did Bai Shanbao know? He turned to look at Manbao. Manbao scratched his head and said, "I don't think there is. No one seems to be selling land in the village." "Yeah, it's not that when you can't live, who will sell the land? Even if someone sells it, it's also a piece of land, and few can be made into pieces," Lu said, "but our family's farms are all a piece of land. One piece is connected, and the lesser one is connected by 80 acres. Before Bai Shanbao understood the key points, Manbao had already nodded and said, "It's easy to work together and save a lot of time and manpower." Lu Shi nodded with a smile, looked at her admiringly, and said, "Exactly, your Uncle Bai's family has been operating in Lujiang County for 3 generations to have such a scale. Our family has just arrived, and I don't know how long it will take to have the current scale of the industry. Yanjiashan cannot be bought and sold, but there is a hole. Lu can buy it if he wants to, but it is impossible to buy it in pieces. Unless she uses slanderous means to force people to ruin people, people have to take out fields to destroy money and disasters. If you do that, when you meet a competent county magistrate, it is not certain who will die first, and Lu Shi will not do such a thing." She said, "I sold the real estate shops in Longzhou, and then I bought a property nearby. It was also luck. It just happened that someone sold the land. Although there are wicked people who come to persecute, there are also friends and relatives who have good relations with our family. The reason why I want to take you back this time is to show them. My grandson is very capable and smart now," Lu said. She said with deep eyes, "Let them not deceive people too much. Why do they dare to approach step by step? It's not because their orphans and widowed mothers are easy to bully." And then Bai Shanbao was too playful before, fighting with his classmates in the clan, contradicting teachers, and ignorant. They felt that the Bai family had no successor and that Bai Shanbao was not afraid, so they stared at their family business unscrupulously. But now that Shanbao has improved, he is getting smarter day by day, and his studies are also good. Lu decided to take him back to the Mid-Autumn Festival, not only to shock, but also to show off. In the past, Mrs. Lu would not deliberately hide the affairs of Bai Shanbao's family, but she consciously avoided some things. Now, since the two children asked, she also felt that they had grown up, so she simply told them. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 315. Children's memory is good, but sometimes very poor. The same is true of the wise Bai Shanbao. He remembered the fights he had with people in Longzhou, the tit-for-tat with his husband, and he would never forget the bullying. But he forgot most of what those people looked like, at least he couldn't recall their specific appearance now. That's the case. He heard from his grandmother that they were going back to show off their power. Oh no, they were going back to show the elders how he had grown up. The first thing he thought of was those who had bullied him. Bai Shanbao was no longer disgusted, and took Manbao back to the study, and told her triumphantly how to fight back against those people when he returned to Longzhou. Manbao was a little worried. You're only alone, so you won't be able to fight. I don't fight with them, I want to compare knowledge with them. Then what if they just don't compare their knowledge with you and have to fight with you? Bai Shanbao was silent, and began to think about this possibility, and then felt that this possibility was very high. More than 2 years ago, he certainly wasn't afraid. Not only will he not be afraid, but he will face the difficulties with his fists clenched. However, the nearly 3 years of life in Qilai village made Bai Shanbao know that if he was destined to lose a fight, but he still raised his face to meet him, it would not be called heroic, but stupid. He looked down at Manbao and suggested, how about you take your nephews and nieces to Longzhou with me? When we fight together, the big head fight is the worst, and we will definitely win. After thinking about it seriously, Manbao shook his head. My parents definitely won't allow it. Bai Shanbao slumped his shoulders. Then what do you say? How about you hold Daji's leg temporarily and let him teach you martial arts again? Bai Shanbao felt his legs trembling. He hesitated and didn't answer. Manbao also subconsciously touched his chubby legs. Ever since Daji showed off the stunt of fighting people on the roof, both Bai Shanbao and Manbao have been very interested in his kung fu, and have strongly expressed that they want to learn it. Then they squatted for 3 days, and Manbao finally sneaked home with trembling calves, making Daji forget about it at the cost of not going to Bai's house for 3 consecutive days. Bai Shanbao was even more pitiful. After squatting for 5 days, he wiped his tears and said that he would not study, and only escape the disaster. Thinking of how difficult it was to practice martial arts, the two children were drooping their heads, and Bai Shanbao didn't think it was useful to hold his thighs temporarily. Manbao sighed and said, then you can only play with their fathers, don't play with them. Bai Shanbao winked at her. You mean it's like getting along with Uncle Bai? Manbao nodded, jumped down from the chair, brought the book to him at the desk and placed it in front of him, and said seriously, let's study hard, read a little more. If they come to the door then, you don't play with them, just read, and when their father comes to you and then you show up, you can only talk to their father, whether it is to discuss knowledge or go to school. As long as you study better than them and perform better than them, their father will beat them up for you. Bai Shanbao seemed to have found a good road and nodded fiercely, yes, it's just like Uncle Bai and Bai Er. For a moment, Bai Shanbao's heart had already flashed 7 or 8 conspiracies, and the two children looked at each other with joy. Manbao was also ambitious, rolled up his sleeves and said, come on, I'll read with you. If there's anything you don't understand, we'll discuss it together, and if you don't understand, ask Mr. It is good. By the way, when are you leaving? 5 days later, Bai Shanbao said, it will take time to pack up. So they can probably go to Longzhou 5 days before the Mid-Autumn Festival, and when they have finished visiting their relatives and friends, the Mid-Autumn Festival will also arrive. After the Mid-Autumn Festival, I can go home after dealing with it for some time. In this way, the time is quite tight. But Bai Shanbao didn't want to waste time on the road, so he looked for books to read on the road. Books like University that are only suitable for class and quiet reading are of course not suitable for taking on the road to read, so Man Bao and he are looking for travel notes, poems, topographical records, etc. with stories. But there are too few books in this era. Although Man Bao and the others are still young, they have read most of the books in this study. Now bedtime story books can no longer be found here. Man Bao searched in his bookshelf, and finally contributed 2 storybooks that were more in line with the present. The storybook was printed by Keek directly from the encyclopedia, of course after Man Bao paid the points. Because it is paid first and then downloaded and printed, the text is of this era, and even the binding is in accordance with the characteristics of this world. It was not the first time that Bai Shanbao had read Man Bao's storybook, but it was the first time he had borrowed it for 2 months. Holding 2 thick books, he was also very excited. Man Bao repeatedly urged, "You have to keep it and don't show it to others." Bai Shanbao said there was no problem, "Don't worry, I will definitely keep it, even my grandmother won't tell me." Grandmother didn't like him reading these vernacular storybooks. The 2 children hid behind the bookshelf and smiled at each other, like 2 little foxes. Bai Shanbao sneaked the book among the other selected books, and then stuffed the book into his box. Man Bao kept insisting, "You must read more, and it is best to ask some advanced questions that adults can't answer to make them even more angry." Bai Shanbao nodded again and again. Although Daji was far away, the voices of the 2 children were not very small, so he naturally heard them. In this regard, he can only reply with a blank face. What can he say? What else can I say? The Bai family began to ask Mr. Zhuang for leave. For such a long vacation, of course, I have to ask Mr. Zhuang in advance. Mr. Zhuang didn't have any comments, and then gave Bai Shanbao a lot of homework, such as how many texts to memorize, how many large characters to write, what characters to write, and what questions to answer. Even according to what to write articles, at least a few articles. It took Mr. Zhuang 3 days to arrange the homework. When Bai Shanbao retrieved his homework from Mr. Zhuang, the expression on his face was wooden. Man Bao sighed after flipping through the pages, "It seems that I have to do so much homework, and you're not here, I don't even have anyone to discuss." Bai Shanbao nodded in agreement. It's better for 2 people to do homework together. So Man Bao directly wrote down all these topics. Since you know the topic of the homework in advance, you can preview it in advance, so that the homework can be faster. Bai Shanbao. Looking at Man Bao's cheating copy of the title, Bai Shanbao could only wait by propping his chin. "When I get back, we can sell our ginger, right?" Man Bao counted the time and nodded, it's almost, it will rain occasionally these days, my father said, when the weather is clear, my family will start the autumn harvest. Isn't it just finished in summer? Yeah, after the summer harvest, it's the autumn harvest, Man Bao said. As a matter of course, the rice has to be harvested before the Mid-Autumn Festival, otherwise it will be over if it rains. I didn't expect to attract the attention of so many book friends. In the end, I didn't have an infusion. I went to the hospital for an examination. I only prescribed medicine for 7 days. Above 69%, today is 71%, and the temperature is high. But it will be fine. It grows on the arm. Although it does not look good, it is still okay. Finally, in the last hour of June, there are book friends who haven't voted for the monthly ticket to support Bamboo. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 316. The villagers of Kilai village have successively recovered all the beans from the ground. Recently, they are fighting against God. They go out every morning to look at the sky. When they see the morning sun, they take out the wheat and beans to dry. As long as there are big dark clouds floating in the sky, no matter where people are, they have to run back to collect beans and wheat. The rest of the leisure time is to cut the hemp from the field and cook it. Old Joe has many family members, and after helping Joe who collect all the beans, they have nothing to do. Mr. Qian soaked the beans and made 2 sheets of tofu every morning to bring to the county seat for Zhou Yulang. This was hard work and time-consuming. In order not to delay Mr. Zhou's time, Mrs. Qian and Zhou Dalan would get up and grind the beans every morning. When the tofu is made, the family will get up. Then the couple went back to sleep and woke up when the school was cooking. On Tuesday, Lang still carries the burden to the county town to sell vegetables, tofu, and wild mushrooms every day. There has been a lot of rain recently, and it will always rain one day or the next, and wild fungi in the mountains have sprung up like bamboo shoots after a rain. Every day, Shiro led his 2 younger brothers and a group of nephews and nieces up the mountain to look for wild mushrooms, and by the way, tukaho. But I don't know if their luck is not as good as Manbeo, and they haven't harvested for a few days. They can only wait for Manbeo to go up the mountain to find them when he has time after school. But Manbeo has been very busy recently, not only because Mr. Zhuang has a lot of homework, but also because Bai Shanbeo is going to leave. Manbao was reluctant to leave, and every day after school, he went to Bai's house to read a book with him, discussing various countermeasures after he returned to Longzhou. Of course, Manbao also gave Bai Shanbeo a pair of slingshots for self-defense. Bai Shanbeo's former classmates gave her a bad impression. They actually liked fighting so much, and they still bullied the less. You can't even beat me, there are so many of them, I think it's very difficult for you to beat them, Manbao said when he put the slingshot into his hand, so we don't fight meleeally, we can do long-range attacks, and in the future you can hit people with the slingshot. Bai Shanbeo looked at it, it was different from the slingshots they usually play, it was much more refined in comparison. The main thing is that he has never seen a bowstring. In the past, the bow they made was made of long hair mixed with some miscellaneous hair, and the thick cloth that adults used to make the sole was tied in the middle. A well-made slingshot hurts a lot, but most of them don't shoot very far, because the bowstring is not elastic enough. Bai Shanbeo, who has already made 2 slingshots, knows this best. But now the pair of slingshots that Manbeo gave him, not only the bow body is well polished, but also the bowstring he has never seen before, just pull it back lightly and it can be pulled far away, and then with more force, he almost reached out to the front with his right hand holding the bow. Manbao excitedly picked up a stone from the ground and gave it to him. Bai Shanbeo took it in his hand, pulled it hard, and let go again, the stone flew out, and shot through the window with a bang. The 2 children stayed together. Soon there was a loud shout in the room, which bastard smashed my window with a stone. The 2 children turned around and ran away. After a while, the door opened, and a mother with a round waist rushed out, pinched her waist and scolded, "Who is throwing stones in it?" Seeing that no one answered, she said angrily, "Don't let me catch it, or I'll peel your skin." The 2 turned around and ran out of sight, then hid in the corner and looked into the yard. They breathed a sigh of relief, Mother Fang seems to have gained weight again. Bai Shanbeo retracted his little head, nodded and said, "My mother is a picky eater. Mommy Fang eats all the things she doesn't like to eat. It's no wonder she's not fat." Bai Shanbeo looked down at the slingshot in his hand and exclaimed, "This is really amazing, how did you do it?" "It wasn't made by me, it was given by my friend." Manbao took out another pair from his cloth bag and whispered, "I also have a pair, so don't lose it, won't I lose it? Give mine to you." "Don't lose it." Bai Shanbeo was very curious, "Who is your friend, and what is this bowstring made of?" He said it was P2 material. "Anyway, we don't have it here, so don't worry about it." The 2 slingshots were sent to her by Drmo Kongjun. Since she wanted to cooperate with Manbao, the MD has been very amiable to her. Since she is amiable, You can't just talk about medicine in class, but always establish a personal relationship, so that they can communicate with each other in the future. For example, he wanted to study some pathogens in their world, and he would need her to help collect them at that time. Manbao is still a child, so of course she is happy when others treat her well, and she will naturally say what troubles she has when she is seduced by the other party. For example, she has a good friend who is going to go away, and as a result, there are many bad people in the distance who will bully him, so she wants to buy some weapons to protect him, but after a search in the mall, she found that the cheapest one is a stun stick. It's still an anti-wolf type of weapon, and the higher-end ones can't even be found in the mall. In fact, she just wanted to buy a pair of slingshots. But people in the future don't seem to play with slingshots, and they don't even have such toys. Keek told Manbao that in the future, human cubs will play with flying cars, flying skateboards and small mechas. Because mechas are rampant, of course, there is no such small weapon to play in the hand. Finally, after Manbao provided the drawings and principles, the MD made two by hand and sent them to Manbao. Because the technological content of slingshots is not high, it is also owned by this era, so the encyclopedia will not collect tax, and will let it go. Manbao secretly tried it himself, but he didn't pull it to the maximum force, and he didn't shoot at the object. He just thought that the bowstring was easy to pull, but he didn't expect it to be so powerful. The two children couldn't help but sigh at the same time. No wonder the slingshot is listed as a hidden weapon in the book. It turns out that the well-made slingshot is so powerful. With the weapon, Bai Shanbao was full of confidence, put it into his arms and said, "Don't worry, with this, I will definitely not be bullied by others." Okay. By the way, don't shoot people in the eyes. Don't worry, I won't. Bai Shanbao reluctantly took Manbao's hand and said, "I'm leaving tomorrow, will you come to see me tomorrow?" "When are you leaving? I'll take leave to see you off." "There's no need to ask for leave. My grandmother said that we should go out a little earlier than usual for school, and we should stop for an hour or two at noon to avoid the scorching Sunday. Then I'll get up early tomorrow to see you off. Don't forget me. Remember to watch more fun and delicious things on the way. Come back and tell me that I'll eat it when I go out in the future." "No problem, I'll still write to you." "Wow, that's great," Manbao thought for a while and said, "If it can't be delivered to the village, it will be delivered to Fu County Magistrate's house. I will tell second sister Fu to help me receive letters and wait for my second. Go into the city and bring it back." "No, I'll write it to you when I write to Bai Er, and let the servants deliver it directly to your house." A little cutie said that the more you have, the more monthly passes. I think it makes sense, so let's continue to add more tonight. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 317. When going out, my grandmother will definitely write to Uncle Bai. When that time comes, he will write a letter to Bai Er under the pretext of putting Manbao's letter in it. Of course Manbao knew this, and the two looked at each other and smiled. When Lu and Zheng passed by to see the prepared carriage, they saw the two children holding hands and smiling at each other. Lu couldn't help but stop. Zheng Shi also saw the two of them, and sighed, "It's rare for Shanbao to have a friend, so it must be very sad to leave." Lu Shi glanced at her and said, "It's only been a month or so, and it's not like he won't come back. It's been a long time. I can't bear it, let alone the two of them are children." Lu Shi didn't know what to say to her daughter-in-law. She squinted at the two children holding hands and said goodbye, standing for a while before continuing to walk forward. "Let's go, it's a long way to go. The last time I moved here, I was in a hurry. I didn't prepare everything well. This time I have to prepare well." Zheng Shi responded. The Bai family only kept 2 horses, and Master Bai also kept 2 horses, and he was willing to lend one of his own horses to the Lu family. Lu thought for a while, but did not refuse. Except for the 3 carriages, the other carriages were pulled by donkeys. This time, Mrs. Lu went with the intention of shocking and showing off, so she brought a lot of things with her. Most of them are food for the family to eat on the road. Lu Shi will not treat himself badly in this regard, let alone treat his grandson badly. The rest are gifts for relatives and friends, there are precious things that are not useful, and there are simple souvenirs. He packed a full 3 donkey carts, and then went to the county town to ask someone from the escort bureau to escort him. Compared with the last time when they fled to Kilai village in embarrassment, it was much larger and calmer. In the entire White House, except for one long-term worker who stayed to take care of the crops, 2 old servants, and 2 very young girls who stayed behind, everyone else went back with Lu and the others. Manbao specially gave Kika time to wake her up tomorrow. When she reached the entrance of the village, rubbing her eyes, she saw 3 horse carts and 3 donkey carts lined up in the dim sky and slowly crossed the bridge from the other side of the river. Manbao was stunned. Bai Shanbao, who was in the first carriage, saw Manbao from the car window, and immediately waved his hand excitedly. When the carriage came to him, he jumped down before he could stand firm. Bai Shanbao said, "I've been waiting for you at home for a long time, and I thought you wouldn't come to see me. How could it be? I promised you, if I really don't come, it must be because I fell asleep and haven't woken up, not on purpose. I know, but if you're drowsy with something as big as sending me, obviously you don't take me to heart. You can't say that, it can only mean that sleep is more important than you." The 2 children stood on the side of the road talking nonsense, and the 6 cars stopped and waited. Manbao glanced at the convoy, and sighed like an adult, "Forget it, I won't disturb you. If you don't set off again, you won't be able to rest at noon. Manbao took out 3 paper bags from the bookcase and handed them to Bai Shanbao. "This is the cake my sister-in-law baked early in the morning, with eggs and vegetables in it, but it's delicious, you and Grandma Lu and the others should share it." Bai Shanbao took it and found that the paper package was still very hot, apparently it had just been made. He was a little moved, and solemnly said, "When I come back, I will go up the mountain with you to dig poria." Bai Shanbao paused for a moment and then said, "The poria cocos dug up are yours, I won't share it with you." When Manbao heard this, he was happy and waved his paws, "You are so kind, then I will wait for you to come back." Bai Shanbao said there was no problem. Bai Shanbao climbed into the carriage, handed the paper package to his grandmother, and then lay down at the window and waved goodbye to Manbao. Manbao also waved to him and watched the carriage slowly move forward, followed by the donkey carriage behind. As the convoy moved further and further away, Manbao stood at the intersection and watched them meandering forward, before disappearing from sight after a long time. Manbao lowered his head in despair and carried the bookcase to the school. It was still early, and there was still no one in the school. Manbao glanced at Bai Shanbao's position, and simply put the bookcase in his place. Then I sat down and felt it, and found that it was good when Shanbao was not there. The space was much more spacious, and the bookcases no longer needed to be placed by my feet. Manbao laughed, took out the cake left in the bookcase, took out the bamboo tube with warm water, and ate the pancake directly with the warm water. It was delicious. It's just that she'll be lonely after eating. If Bai Shanbao was here, she could talk to him about the taste of pancakes. Now that he's gone, she can only keep the words in her heart. Manbao lonely took out the book and started reading. It stands to reason that Bai Shanbao is gone, so Manbao should be able to find time to go to the mountain with Shirulang and the others to find Fuling. As a result, for 2 days in a row, she stayed in her room to do homework or review the prep work, and she did not see any suggestion to go up the mountain. Instead, I asked them to come back from the mountains to find something, or wild mushrooms, or the soil of wild mushrooms, or all kinds of flowers and plants. I don't know what she wants these things for. On the 3rd day, Shu Lang couldn't bear it any longer, and deliberately chose her time to go home after school. He leaned on her window and looked into the room, asking her through a window, "Man Bao, what happened to your husband recently?" "A lot of homework." "Fortunately," Man Bao said while burying his head in writing, "the main reason is that there are a lot of notes to take, and a lot of review. Not only take notes in class, but also take notes in the classroom. It is not only necessary to review the textbooks in the classroom, but also the medical books that have been learned in the teaching room. Especially those medical books, there are a lot of things to memorize. She thinks it is 10 times more difficult than taking Mr. Zhuang's class. Recently, she was studying the structure of the human body. Mr. Mo found a picture for her, which showed not only the meridians and acupoints of human beings, but also the internal organs, and the most important thing was a moving picture. When she clicks, the meridians and blood vessels in that part will be activated, so as to easily tell her how that place works. Bao Bao felt very strange. But those acupoints and meridians are really hard to memorize. She only memorizes 10 a day, and she has to integrate them. She doesn't know how long it will take to learn. Shiro was obviously not very satisfied with this answer. "Then can you finish it?" "Of course you can, although it will take a little effort, but there is no problem in writing it." "Is there any spare time after writing?" Man Bao understood now, raised his head and asked curiously, "Fourth brother, if you have something to say, just tell me." Thursel Lang peeked into the window a little more, and said with a smile, "Young sister, have you forgotten the tuckahoe on the mountain? They might miss you all the time." "Think I dug them?" "That's right," Thursday Lang nodded solemnly, "they must want to see the sun again, and want to play their role in the world. Who wants to stay under the earth? I think the same is true for Poria. New month and new weather, ask for a monthly ticket. The next update will be around 8 p.m., 2 chapters at a time." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 318. Man Bao thought about it seriously, looked at the fourth brother, and then looked at the general body structure notes on the table. After swaying from side to side, she couldn't hold back the temptation. She put the pen down and stood up and said, "Okay, let's go take a look." Man Bao glanced at the book on the desk again, and his conscience was a little uneasy, so he said, "But I have to come back early, I have to review my homework and prepare for my homework." Thursday Lang said there was no problem. He closed the window for her with a smile, and led her up the mountain. "I don't think we need to go very far. Although the mountains outside our village are a little small and there are not so many pine trees, they are not old or young. Let's look around first, if not, we will go further." Place. It was a bit regretful that Shu Lang said here, when it comes to pine trees, the mountains are the most numerous. It's a pity, it's the mountain of the two brothers of the Jiao family, alas. Man Bao didn't care, she said, "We have found so many Poria cocos from the mountains, and there shouldn't be many, and we can't dig it right now. We'll sneak up when there are fewer people going out in winter." "That can't be done, the autumn harvest is about the same." At that time, everyone was busy harvesting rice, and no one noticed. In winter, they can't hide it from the people in the village. "Let's not talk about it. We have to go up the mountain to cut wood all winter, and if we go up the mountain, they will definitely find out." Man Bao thought about it too, and didn't mention going to the mountains again. Maybe their place is really suitable for the growth of Poria, and Man Bao has keep cheating, so he went up the mountain to find 2 places of Poria. Knowing that Man Bao was in a hurry, when he found the first place, Shai Zilang gave Liavolang and Datu the task of digging tuckahoe, and he led Man Bao and the rest to continue their search. Finally, another piece was found 500 paces away from the first one. On Thursday, Lang happily put down his hoe and waved his hand generously. "Lulu, take Man Bao home to do your homework, just leave it to us here." "Man Bao." Sachiro. Man Bao turned around and left, deciding to be angry with the older brother who used it and threw it away. On Saturday, Lang reluctantly followed, and he also wanted to dig poria in the mountains. Man Bao's interest in digging poria is mainly about money and points, and he is not very interested in playing in the mountains. So after finding 2 pieces, she went down the mountain with confidence. As soon as she got home, she plunged into her room to take notes. Xiao Qian came over and glanced at her, and then went back to the kitchen to work with confidence. Mrs. He's belly has already stood up, and Mrs. Fang's belly has also taken shape, so they are now sitting on the stool and slowly dividing the twine. Feng Shi and Zhou 11 went to water the vegetable garden together, and by the way, pulled out some old vegetable roots and planted new vegetables. The old Zhou family quieted down for a while, and Man Bao became more and more fascinated by sitting at the desk. It was not until Da Ya knocked on the door to come in that she felt a little sore neck. "Little sister, it's time to eat." Man Bao rubbed his little neck, replied and glanced at his notes, nodded with satisfaction, put the pen on the pen holder, got up and went to the compound with Dia. Because Man Bao seldom reads and writes at home, she usually goes to Bai's house to do homework right after school, and doesn't come back until dinner. After dinner, she usually either went out to play, or squatted in the yard to teach them to read, or she held a book to read. But in the past 2 days, She went to see her a lot, and she found that the little girl had been burying her head in writing. She stood at the door to look at her several times, but she didn't notice it. Only then did she know that her class was really so tight, and she always thought that she went to the Bai family to play with the young master of the Bai family. So reading is really hard work. Not only the Qian family has this kind of cognition, but the old Zhou family has also realized it. Especially Chu Yulang, he didn't know how to be polite, so he was very rude to look through Man Bao's notes, but he found that he couldn't understand it. You must know that he has finished reading 1,000 characters. Well, although he is not as good as Da Ya and Er Ya in terms of reading, he is better than a few older brothers. The eldest brother and the third brother only recognized the names of the family members, and only knew some of the simplest numbers. So what Yao Mei has learned is so advanced. Thursday Lang's mouth has always been unable to keep secrets, so it took less than half a day for the old Zhou family to know how difficult it was for Man Bao to learn. Even old Zhou Tiou wandered over curiously and took a look. Old Zhu Tu, who only knew the names of himself and his old wife, couldn't understand the notes written by Man Bao, but he could read the paper she used. Old Zhu Tu was heartbroken by the stacks of thick paper, so he couldn't help asking her today, "Man Bao, do you have any money on you? Would you like your mother to get some for you? Buy ink and paper." Man Bao sat in his chair, glanced at his father curiously, shook his head and said, "No need, I bought a lot, it's enough." All the pens, ink, and paper that Man Bao uses now are bought from shopping malls. In the past, she only bought paper. Later, the pens sent by her husband were bald and the ink was used up. Searched the store. Although it is less and it is not cheap, it is points, which is much better than using copper coins, and the quality is also good, so she always uses the ones in the mall. Hearing this, old Zhou nodded, glanced at the dishes on the table, and gave her a chopstick and egg. The folds on his face turned into a chrysanthemum with a smile, and said with relief, "Reading takes a lot of time, eat more eggs." Man Bao nodded, divided the eggs into 3 portions, gave 1 portion to his father, and another to his mother, and began to eat with rice. This year, the chickens at home have been raised well, not only more than in previous years, but also laying more eggs, so Qian is very willing. If he does not buy meat, the family will cook a few eggs every day. After all, there are 2 pregnant women at home, right? But today, she specifically instructed Xiao Qian to cook 2 more, just to replenish Man Bao's body. But although there are more, there are also many people who eat them, and Man Bao has never been willing to occupy most of the eggs by himself. Besides, she still has eggs to eat every morning. Qian's heart was relieved, but he did not accept Man Bao's kindness. He took the egg back to her, looked at her with pity, and said, "No wonder our Man Bao eats so much and doesn't grow taller. It's because we have to learn so many things. It's too brain intensive, and the nutrition can't keep up." Old Zhutu agreed, "Everyone, let's cook an egg for Man Bao every noon from now on." "Man Bao, I don't want it. Dad, I don't like eggs anymore, and it's not good to eat too many eggs." "Nonsense, how can something as good as eggs be bad?" Old Jotio Yukinkan asserted. "You don't have to save money for your family, you can still do it at home by adding an egg a day. You spend a lot of time studying, but you have to take care of it. Whose children go to school with your peace of mind?" You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 319. Old Zhutu was half coaxing his little girl, half telling his sons and daughters-in-law to listen. He said, "You don't need to tame your studies when you study, you don't talk about what you have learned, and you teach your family how to read. No one in our family knows each other now. How many words? Especially your nephews and nieces, even if they are sent to the academy, it is no more than that. They will all be scholars in the future." Old Zhutu always gets excited every time he thinks of this place. Studying is not easy. If their Qilai village hadn't been adored by Master Bai and invited Mr. Zhuang to come, there really isn't a single scholar in their village. Even so, among the more than 60 households in Qilai village except for Manbao, only 4 can send their children to the school. And there are already 2 who have decided to graduate at the end of this year. After all, the child is already 12 years old. After recognizing the words, he can try to find some work in the county town. After the child recognized the characters, he went to the county town to find an apprentice in the accountant. After 5 or 6 years, he might become an accountant. How hard is it to read? That is more rare than picking up a piece of gold on the ground for nothing. Old Zhutu's eyes roamed back and forth between Datu and Ertu, and said solemnly, "Datu, Ertu, you must study the words your sister taught you, and when you grow up a little, let your father go to the county town. Find an apprentice from the accountant for you, and you will also be the accountant in the future." Zhou Dalan and Zhou Zhoulang almost spit out the rice in their mouths and stared at their father with wide eyes. Old Zhou Tiou caught their gaze, glared back and said, "What are you looking at? Your sons already recognize so many words, what's wrong with being a cashier? Do you still think that they are like you, digging food in the fields all your life, and have no time to spare? Going to work for someone else?" The big head stuffed the grabbed eggs into his mouth, and said vaguely, "Grandpa, I like to shave food in the ground. When it's my turn to plant the ground, I will plant all my ground with ginger, sell it for a lot of money, and then buy a lot of meat, comes back, eat one bite and throw another." Old Joe was stunned. Xiao Qian slapped it directly, and said angrily, "I haven't developed yet, so I think about wasting it, and I even eat a bite and throw it away. Don't you know that waste will be struck by thunder?" Datu said aggrieved, "I just said it casually, and it wasn't me who said it, it was my aunt who said it." Man Bao looked up from the bowl and categorically denied, "I didn't say it." "You just said, Datu was wronged." "It's what you said, Auntie. In the future, if you have the money, you will buy us meat to eat, and let us eat one bite and throw one bite." Man Bao said solemnly, "That's also what you threw away. I won't throw it away, I just don't have anything to eat, and I'll take it back for my parents and sister-in-law to eat." Xiao Qian turned his head and smiled at Man Bao, then turned his head and stared at the big head seriously. Big head wanted to cry. The matter of finding an accountant as an apprentice is over. Joe Dallin and Tuesday Lang breathed a sigh of relief. How could they have the ability to find the accountant? The person with the highest status they knew was the shopkeeper Zheng of the pharmacy, and they knew that they looked down on their 2 children. This is over, but everyone knows how hard it is for Man Bao to read. At the same time, they understand that it is no wonder that Man Bao always knows so many things and finds so many money-making jobs for his family. It seems that reading is really useful. MRSGN's gaze couldn't help to look back and forth between the big head and the third head. Jojo Lang also stared at the second head, and he looked at the fourth head and rubbed his stomach. Originally, she wanted to have a girl, so that she would have both children, but now she thinks her son is not bad. If he can be smarter, he will be sent to study when he grows up. Fang Shi also touched his stomach, and the more he looked at Man Bao, the more he liked it, and decided to turn around and let Man Bao roll on the bed again. Maybe the child born could be as smart as Man Bao. Reading is very useful. This is the unified understanding of the adults of the old Zhou family after a lapse of 3 years, and it is much deeper than before. Although Man Bao didn't want to eat eggs, the next day Xiao Jian took an egg from home to go to school. After the rice was cooked, the egg was steamed. She took out the bowl of steamed eggs, put the rice on it, put the vegetables on it, and put the bowl aside. When Man Bao rushed out of the school, Qian handed her the bowl and asked her to take it out to eat. Man Bao likes to mix rice and vegetables together when eating, and when she digs down, she finds a steamed egg. Qian had just finished dividing the food, and when he came out to see it, he couldn't help but laugh. How is it? Is it delicious? Man Bao nodded fiercely. Sister-in-law, can I replace the egg water with steamed eggs in the morning? Xiao Qian rubbed her head with a smile. The old doctor said that although egg water like that is a bit fishy, it is the most nutritious. Although Man Bao was a little disappointed, he didn't say anything. She ate the steamed eggs contentedly, then looked up at the river in front of the school. I don't know where Bai Shanbao has gone, whether he has steamed eggs. Of course, Bai Shanbao didn't eat steamed eggs. Eggs are easy to break. At this moment, he was sitting under a tree and nibbling on pancakes, which were made by the cook just now. He always felt that it was not as delicious as Manbao's cooking, and it was possible that he had a bad appetite under the sun, so he sighed. In a sigh, let Daji go and take down his bookcase, and he will read a book later. Daji responded, turned around and went back to the car to get the bookcase. Lu was very satisfied with this, and felt that his grandson became more and more eager to learn, but also advised him, take a nap in the afternoon, and I have to hurry after the afternoon. Bai Shanbao said, it's okay, I'll just watch it for a while, I'd better sleep in the car. There is no way, the car is too shaken, he is dizzy when he reads a book, he might as well just cover his head and sleep, so it is better to read during the noon break. You must know that he still has a lot of homework to do, and he also has to memorize the texts. He will read it a few times now. After he has written it down, he can recite it with his eyes closed when he gets in the car. He has less time to read now, and he will definitely not be able to keep up with Man Bao's progress. Across the road, Man Bao was also listening carefully to Mr. Zhuang to open a small stove for her. She felt that now Shan Bao was sitting in the car and had nothing else to do all day. He must be reading a book, or something. Read books. He has so much time and is a little bit smarter than her. If she doesn't work hard and waits for him to come back, there is a big gap between the two. What if he makes fun of her? So she has to work hard. Mr. Zhuang was very satisfied with the above, and couldn't help nodding. Originally, she was a little distracted in class yesterday, obviously not used to Bai Shanbao's departure, but today she is very serious. Mr. Zhuang is very satisfied with this. There is no need to talk to the younger disciple. After turning on the small stove, Mr. Zhuang looked at the hourglass and said to her, I have already digested, you should sleep for a quarter of an hour, and you will have class in 2/4 of an hour. Manbao responded, put away the book, and lay down on the couch and closed her eyes, but she couldn't sleep at the moment, so she went through the knowledge she just learned in her mind. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 320. Lao Zhutu sat on the threshold and looked up at the sky. Manbao had just finished his notes. He listened to Keek's suggestion and went out to take a look at his eyes. Seeing Dad sitting on the threshold, she also sat on the threshold and looked up with him. Look at the sky. One big and one small sat on the threshold without saying a word, and the villagers who passed by couldn't help but laugh when they saw it. What are you looking at? Old Jotio sighed, look at God. Manbao nodded solemnly, look at the clouds. The villagers also raised their heads to look at the sky, only to see the sunset glow in the sky, so they leaned against the wall and looked together. Uncle Jin, do you think it will be sunny today? It rained 2 more times today, one after another. Although the sun came out in the afternoon, it was not easy for everyone to open the sickle and cut the rice on such a day. Old Jotio touched his bong and said, I can't wait for tomorrow whether it's sunny or not. When the rice in the field turns yellow, I have to cut it. Your family will open a sickle tomorrow. Well, if you cut it, pick it back and dry it at home instead of leaving it in the field. The villagers were a little envious. Uncle Jin, your family has a large population, of course it's okay, my family is not good, just 6 people, and 2 dolls, you can cut a piece of land in a day, it's impossible to pick it back. Old Zhutu was a little arrogant, but he still laughed and said, I have many family members, but I also have a lot of land. They are all the same, the same. The same is strange, the speed of one person cutting one piece of land and 2 people cutting 2 pieces of land together are also different. Although he didn't know why, it was different. They can't calculate, but they can see with their eyes, and they can compare directly. Manbao pouted and said, Mr. does not have a holiday for the autumn harvest. The old Zhutu laughed and said, if you don't let it go, let it go. Anyway, there is not much rice this year, so you little babies don't need to go to the ground. In fact, my family planted a total of 12 mu of rice, and half of it was destroyed, the villagers said with some relief, thanks to the imperial court tax exemption, otherwise we would not be able to survive this year. In fact, although the imperial court is exempt from taxation, everyone's life is tight. In the past, 1 mu of rice could be harvested about 2.5 load, but now there may not be even 1 load. A lot of rice has not been grouted. When you reach out and touch it, it is all empty shells, and you can only use straw to cut it. The luck of the old Zhutu's family was not much better in terms of rice. It was the same situation. Several fields were directly washed away. Now there are more grasses than rice in the fields. However, the pressure on their family is not so great now, because the harvest of wheat is good. Recently, Tuesday Lang has a fixed income every day, plus the windfall of fulling, so now Lao Zhutu is quite calm and steady. The old Zhou family decided to harvest the rice. As soon as the news came out, many people went to the fields to look at the rice. It was already August. Even if there was a flood, most of the rice was yellow and ready to be harvested. They looked at the sky and decided to start the harvest tomorrow. The countryman's decision was so quick and unreasonable. The day before, everyone was sitting under a tree with twine to divide the line. The next day, before dawn, everyone took a sickle and picked a bamboo basket to go out. Instantly change from slack to busy farming. Rice is better harvested than wheat, but not many villagers in Kilai village are happy, because this year's rice harvest is really bad, so that everyone has little motivation. The old Zhou family simply did not let He and Fang go to the ground. The rest of the people worked for 6 or 7 days to harvest all the rice in the field, and then started threshing slowly. Because there is no rice in many rice husks, they are shoveled with a dustpan and blown against the wind, and the bosses are blown out in an instant, and there are not many good rice that fall. But everyone has already expected, although sigh, but not very sad. Everyone will also collect the blown rice husks. If there is not enough food at home in the spring of the coming year, these are ground into bran and can be eaten. The old Zhou family also kept it, but the old Zhu calculated the food at home and felt that it was enough, so he decided to use it to feed the chickens. Looking at the 10 bags of empty rice husks that he had put away, MRSGN sighed, "Go to the market and buy 10 chickens back, just as the hens raised last year are old, they can be killed just in time for the Chinese New Year. To eat? The chicken shed is not big enough." Man Bao glanced at the chicken shed in disgust and said, "Mother, they don't like to lay eggs if they are too crowded." Xiao Qian glanced at Man Bao and took the opportunity to suggest, "Mother, why don't we tidy up the wasteland behind the house and build a chicken coop there? It is spacious and the house is not messy." Qian hesitated, "It's outside the house after all, in case someone steals it. Who is so bold, and we have a lot of chickens in our house. If someone tries to steal them, we will know when the chickens croak." Xiao Qian has disliked the chicken coop in the yard more than once. Although the children clean the yard every day, she is the first to get up early and the last to go to bed late. Some dirt inevitably gets into her eyes. Man Bao obviously heard her talk before mentioning it. Man Bao really agreed with the sister-in-law's suggestion with both hands and feet. What if there are weasels? There are not only people stealing chickens in the village, but also mice and weasels. Among them, mice and weasels are the most dangerous. Qilai village is relatively simple, although there are lazy people and nasty gangsters, but because of the small number of people, everyone is close to each other, and there are no people who particularly harm the neighbors. The bastards that the village dislikes are just lazy people who like to wander around the mountains and rivers. For example, Thursday Lang was once classified as a gangster. Zhou Dalan thought for a while and said, "Isn't there still some stones left when we built the house last year? We simply use stones to build the bottom, yellow mud on the top, and a fence around the outside, so the weasel shouldn't be able to get in." Tuesday Lang continued, "The tiles that were trampled on in June are still piled up in the corner. We will use them to build a chicken coop, and the mice will not be able to get in." Qian Shi agreed. The stretch from the right side of Zhou's house to the back of the house is full of their vegetable garden. The vegetable garden on the right was opened when Lao Zhutu's parents were there. Later, Qian took over. Because the family's population was growing, she expanded it little by little. Anyway, it wasn't anyone's land. So she planted it behind the house. There is a mountain about 300 meters away from the land behind the house, which is the mouth of the village allotted to Zhou Dalan. There were 5 or 6 clumps of bamboo growing naturally at the foot of the mountain, while hemp was planted at the foot of the mountain before, but now all of them have been chopped back. The mountain is not very far from their home, and the 300 meters of open space in the middle is unowned, and few people usually walk. Qian Shi automatically marked the piece of land to his own area, and then he didn't need to tell the village chief. The next day, the family started to build a chicken coop. When the construction really started, Man Bao ran there to look back and forth, and found that the chicken coop was not bad. Qian Shi smiled, "How many bugs can there be on the mountain? Why don't you go to the fields?" When Mr. Qian said this, he was startled. "Yes, we can drive the chickens into the fields to eat worms."